morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
It's great to meet you.
Great to meet you too.
Thank you for taking a minute out for the show. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Um, so I'm looking forward to getting into the project here, and I'm curious. Before we do, I want to know first and foremost. 5 years ago, COVID started and threw musicians and everybody into a tailspin. How much of living through that time period has influenced your work and what you do today?
None.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's your answer.
Okay. All right. That's simple.
Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're here to talk about quantum blues, and I'm curious. It's such a powerful lineup of musicians. How did this whole group come together? How did this idea come to formation?
Well, I'm an old friend of Paul Shaffer, right? We go back to, I think, his first year in college in Toronto,
Okay.
whenever that was, in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we we hooked up in Toronto, in the area that was like the hippie area. And we met in the middle of the night, and he was in college, and I was sitting down, I think, playing my guitar on a stoop in Toronto, in the village. That's what it was. I was in the village. And he passed by and he says, "Wow, I never heard anything like that. Wow. Can you show me how you just played what I just heard?" And I said, "Well, we should go somewhere to do that." And so it all began there. And then we went to his college, a couple of blocks away, and I showed him on a keyboard, a piano, what I was playing, and he became very interested. And he said, I got to do this. I have to do this." And he was going to college, and we became friends thereafter till now.
We all know him from David Letterman, obviously, but
Yeah.
as a music fan and
Mhm.
having a jazz radio show and
Mhm.
digging into this music, I've
Mhm.
always sensed something deeper about him. And I know
Mhm.
how much the musicians love him, how much
Yeah.
Dave wanted him on the show. So
Yeah.
my question to you is this: what 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 makes Paul Shaffer as a musician so special?
Well, he's receptive. What? Why did he hear what I was playing
Yeah.
on the stoop in Toronto?
Hmm.
You see, so we're talking about something then that is innate in him. Curiosity,
Yeah.
a need to go beyond himself, a need to know more, do more, be more, which are, part of the creator's equipment to facilitate what they have to do as human beings on the planet.
So talk to me about the other guys in the band. How does this band work?
Well, I've just met the other guys,
Okay.
so it was like Paul called me to a session. Had not known any of these guys, and they're fabulous players. These guys kick butt, and I was surprised, and I was so happy to meet them. I was saying to the drummer, what's his name, Calhoun, Calvin Hill. I don't remember his name. His name,
Yeah, Will Calhoun.
Will Calhoun. Yeah. I told him, I played with Rashid Ali for 7 years. You're two of them. And he smiled, he thought I was goofing. I said, no, 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 for real, man. You have this power in you.
Yeah.
And it was he was available to play at a certain level of intensity. And I realized this is how he plays, this is what he does, and this is who he is. So that was great. Originally I was a drummer. My
Yeah.
father was a drummer. Okay. In the Army band, I was considered a drummer. U.S. Army band during the Vietnam War. So
How,
there's that. There's that too. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so how did that knowledge base of
Mhm.
rhythm and being on the drum kit lend to you being a guitarist?
Well, I also play from an inheritance of guitar energy. My cousins were luthiers, My grandfather thought he was a guitar repairman, and he did what he could do as much as he could do it. But I wouldn't say there was a lot coming from him necessarily. But my cousins, yes, I knew my cousins, and they were serious instrument repair people and construction men. And he made me guitars. He made classical guitars. So my classical guitars that I had, I got from my cousin. So that's in the family. And my cousin John, no, my uncle John, excuse me, yeah, this is important, connected during the Second World War with Django Reinhardt. They were friends. And I'm saying, really, Uncle John, you knew this guy? He says, yeah. And I'd get off of, work, and I would go down, in Paris, he says, I'd go, and I'd look for him. I'd find him in the clubs where he would work. There were a couple of clubs that he worked in. I don't remember the names of them. But he said, yeah, then he'd go and he'd hang out with Django.
Wow.
And he talked to Django, was very friendly, but he loved Django's playing. And at one point, he said that I had, which was to his delight before my uncle passed, he said, you had excelled. Where Django was, you went beyond Django.
Wow.
He says, you were even, he says, I was even more out than Django. And I said, thank you.
Wow. So who were some early influences on you? Who did you emulate? Who did you get into early on?
Well, I heard Django through my uncle. He was an influence, but he for me he was silly. There was something funny about
Yeah.
Django. I'm not going to say he was corny,
Right.
but he had a playfulness.
Uh-huh.
He had a Frenchness. Yes, he was a wild Frenchman.
Yeah.
I dug him,
Yeah.
but I wasn't into guitar. I was into drums.
Yeah.
So I got into guitar later on when I realized, well, I had a doo-wop band and they needed a guitar player, and I had a guitar. I was somewhat related to guitar. That's when I started to seriously get into guitar as a doo-wop singer.
So have you seen that? Have you ever been to Norm's Famous Guitars in Southern California?
No,
Okay. I just saw a documentary on it, and he's a rare guitar collector, and all kinds of people have been in there. And as a guitarist, I wasn't sure. It was a really special story, but um,
I
yeah.
had never heard of him.
Okay. Yeah.
That's new to me. That's new
Yeah.
to me.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about your career. How did things kind of take off? How have we arrived at this point? What's been your evolution?
Well, it's a doo-wop.
Yeah.
Yeah, singing with the guys on the street corners. Then we went to California, right? I met Steve Allen. The band met Steve Allen because our uh, what was the manager was also related to the Beach Boys.
Okay.
So the Beach Boy connection. We were around the Beach Boys, but they were what the public wanted, and we were more jazz, and people weren't listening to that.
Yeah.
So we were singing a doo-wop, but it was more jazz influence than theirs, and everybody loved them, and didn't really care about what we were doing,
Yeah.
which is great because I remained a jazz player, and that's where I excel.
Yeah.
And so it began at that time. I evolved and progressively got stronger, and like my genes, my father's genes as a drummer were starting to get excited when it came to guitar. And I also had an injury. Let me add this. When I was 5 years old, a cousin accidentally pushed me through a window,
Yeah.
and I severed my left wrist artery. It was severed when I was 5, and I nearly died in the process. But uh, on my mother's journey to save her son, right, and in Brooklyn at the time, who was bleeding to death, right, someone pulls up with a car, and he's a veteran. Boom. Realized at that point, I was saved by a vet, a military vet, an army person, who got us to the hospital in a couple of minutes. And then I was operated on, got my 45 stitches. So, question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got deeper into it, and
Yeah.
I had a girlfriend who had a mother who was a Django freak.
Yeah.
She had records, heard that Frenchness in it. I listened to it, but I had the mind of a guitar player from my genes. My Uncle John had a guitar, a bunch of cousins had guitars, but I was the one who was going to carry it. And then, of course, from the doo-wop period, I got into the military, and I loved it. I loved the military. I was 82nd Airborne with the 82nd Airborne. I was with the 101st Airborne Division as well. And I was in Germany with the LURPS, LURPS, right? Long range, you, I guess we can call it long range recon,
Yeah.
radio communications. And so I tested radios. I had to jump, I had to parachute and test the radios. And I'd bring them back to the unit and tell them, yeah, this radio is going. This is a good radio. We did everything we had to do with it. Went into the water with it. We were on a mountain, uh, putting it through snow and various austerities. And I'd say, this radio, it's a good radio, blah blah blah. And so that's part of what I did in the military.
Interesting.
Right.
You know what the interesting parallelism between you and Django is that he damaged his hand in a house fire, I believe. He had some extensive hand damage.
Oh, yes, I remember. I heard about it, but I have extensive damage too. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't see it, but yeah, it, it's here. I
Yeah.
have a slice here, and then I have a deep slice where the artery was severed. See,
Wow. So,
and I suffered it all my life. It
yeah.
hurt. It hurt, but I wouldn't give up what I had to do.
But is that a reminder that miracles happen? Because it sounds miraculous.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was part of my commission, let's say, right? My
Yeah.
initiation. And I received the cosmic transmission through
Yes.
blood. No
That's
blood, no music.
that's it. That's
Right?
it.
So the pain and the suffering is what you hear in my music if you
Yeah.
ever heard it.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
wild.
It is
And it was
wild.
good and it was good enough for Pharoah Sanders,
Yeah.
who I played with for umpteen years. We started in 74, 75, and then he just died a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's something. And then of course I was with Rashid for 7 years. So I was brought to that level of
Yeah.
extreme virtuosity,
Yeah.
right? And so my music demonstrates that.
Absolutely.
And it's different. It's not just what everybody else plays. There are millions of great guitar players, but what I'm doing is unique to my blood,
Yeah.
my suffering,
Yeah.
my agony,
Yeah.
but not my defeat. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. No
Absolutely.
defeat yet. Yes. Mhm.
So, what did you learn from these legends that you played with, like Pharoah Sanders? What did they teach you about being a human and about this music?
Well, that's a good question. Pharaoh's about the music,
Yeah.
right? And so let's say Pharaoh was, it's all about the music. I was about the music. When he heard me play, I was introduced to him by a bass player. I'm not sure, I don't remember his name, uh, but he was working with McCoy Tyner at the same time he was working with Pharaoh and working with Elvin Jones. He was a bass player that was doing all this work. And he heard me play at a luncheon in Manhattan. And he said, I work with Pharaoh. He's at the Vanguard tonight. I'm playing with him. You come down. He needs to hear you.
Yeah.
And I said, Pharoah, I didn't know who Pharoah was. Right? It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I didn't know Pharoah. I wasn't into his music. I wasn't yet into Train.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I go down to the club and Pharoah approaches me. He says, are you the guitar player? And I said, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm the guy. He said, where's your guitar? I said, that was in Manhattan. I said, the guitar's with my mother in Brooklyn. He says, it's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be here. Go get your guitar. I want to hear your playing.
Yeah.
And so I had to take a cab from the Vanguard, go to Brooklyn, get my stuff, come up and meet with Pharoah. And then he says, yeah, come up to me, meet me at the piano. So he goes to the piano, he plays a few chords, and he says, what do you hear? And I had my guitar, I took it out, and I played a couple of notes. He says, that's what I hear. You're with me. You're in my band on the spot.
That's amazing.
And we were together since then.
So, what did you get from him? What did you get from that relationship? How did that help you as a
Well,
musician?
we well listen. We were very similar. He heard my melodies. He related to my melodies. They were different from his, but they were like his.
Yeah.
And when he asked me to play over what he was playing on the keyboard, he said, "That's what I hear." So we had a similar hearing, I guess, to use his speech. He said, "That's what I hear. What you play is what I hear. What I hear is what you play." It was like brothers meeting for the first time in a universe of cosmic, let's say, intensity
Yeah.
and virtuosity.
Wow.
Because he was like John. He could play John. He was John's protege.
Yeah.
So we have to keep that in mind. And he said, "No, you're with me." He wanted me with him all the time, but I couldn't be with him as much as he needed me at that time because I was raising three kids
Yeah.
on my own at the time.
Yeah.
So I was held to my responsibilities as father. And
Yeah.
he respected that. But he would call me from one place to another place. Can you meet me here? Can we get together? Can you make this gig? Most of the time I said I couldn't because I was babysitting. But then there were those times when they got old enough and he and I were getting together more seriously.
Yeah.
And we just loved each other's playing. And that's why I have records of his that I've recorded for him.
Yeah.
And we're on recordings, with Rashid.
Yeah.
And I did get to play with Mo Cortina, who I must say at this point was the strongest cat I played with. He
Wow.
was strong. Yeah, he wanted to play with me too, but I couldn't play with him. I did play with him. I worked with him, and we worked well. And people came up to me and they said, you know, we have been watching the Cortina for a long time, but we never saw his teeth as much as we did when he played with you. I said he was happy, right? He said, yeah, he was the
That's
teeth
great.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was amused at what I was playing,
Yeah.
and what I was playing was what he was playing because I studied his music.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm playing what he's playing, and he's listening to it, and he's laughing, and I'm playing.
That's amazing.
Right? It's there for the taking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Right.
So, what gets you up every day? What you've been doing this for a long time. What gets you up every day? What do you love the best about being a musician?
I, the music. I pick up my guitar in the morning, and I'm playing what I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
That's the gift. That's what's given to you if you're open to it as a musician.
Yeah.
You see, and as a child prodigy on the drums, it was all about multi-rhythmic possibilities. It wasn't about the same old tack 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 tack. No, 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 that's not it. It's variation, exploration.
Yeah.
See, it's creation. That's the thing, and that's where I am today. I mean, if I in the evening, I may pick up my acoustic that my cousin made me and play a few notes on it. But it's infinite. What can I tell you but the truth? It's just infinite.
Yeah.
It's just given to some like that. That's their job, and that's their purpose,
Yeah.
is to manifest creative musical creation, right? Creativity, most importantly. See?
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't call it a curse. I would call it an asset, to play differently.
Yeah.
But there's a loneliness inherent in that process. Right? People hear you and they say, you're too out. In my case, I was mostly too out for some people. But then I wound up with Pharoah and Rashid. So I was too out for a purpose. It was a higher purpose. Play with the train cats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
and there's nothing more delightful than that, man.
Yeah.
To be welcome and to be with them.
Yeah.
And record with the cats, Pharoah and Rashid.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone you play with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
A creator and a spiritual channel. Because with the musical creations, that's part of the function of the spirit, is to manifest, right, the creativity that belongs to the world or belongs to whoever I'm playing for or in the company of, right? So that they are enhanced, they gain from or are healed by, perhaps in some cases, or moved by or uplifted by what I'm playing, especially if it's a new creation, let us say. Then they hear it. They're charmed by that in some cases. In other cases, they don't know what I'm playing because it's just more complicated than they are.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's not A B C D E F G, right? It's just more avant-garde like in nature, which is, I think, the higher purpose of each human being who's a musician, to get to that place, whether you're a classical musician or jazz musician, to get to that place where the genius, not you, but the genius comes through.
Yeah.
Its own thing comes out. And I'm surprised. And we're hearing it. Say, whoa, Tisziji, man, you were playing some shit today.
Yeah.
I said, okay, if you say so, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all have that, but not all of us are open to what that is in the same way. See?
Yeah.
But the most important thing is that I connected. Oh, then of course I connected with Paul. So Paul is part of this.
Yeah.
And he's been with me, and he has considered me his teacher, right? Music teacher, since the beginning. And there's that reality. So he's a mix of what I'm doing and what rock is and whatever blues is and everything else is.
Yeah.
So he's part of this, and I'm happy I was able to provide him with that, and I'm glad I'm going on tour with him in short time.
That's my next question. Quantum Blues comes out on April 25th.
Yeah, that's when we'll be going to Oklahoma.
Okay, so what's the tour? How can people see you and pick up the album, The Good Business?
I don't have a clue.
Okay.
Not yet. I mean, that's Paul's project.
Okay.
So I don't know yet what's happening, but we're getting close to that time when he and I have to get together because we're going to be meeting in Oklahoma.
Okay. Well, I will find out and get links in the show notes to this.
Perfect.
This has been wonderful, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Joe Domino here, host of KC's Neon Jazz Radio. On International Jazz Day, April 30th, join us at the Music Hall in downtown Kansas City for the event of the year, 90 Years of Count Basie's Swing. At 7 p.m., the world-famous Count Basie Orchestra takes the stage. From 5 to 7 p.m., it's a VIP reception with jazz legends and honorees. Finally, from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., join the after-party jam session at Lonnie's Reno Club inside the Ambassador Hotel. Tickets are moving fast. Get yours now at kccreativecity.com/count-basie. This event is part of International Jazz Day, supported by the UNESCO Creative Cities Network, with Kansas City proudly standing as America's only creative city of music. I'll see you there, Kansas City.